All right. Well, welcome to yoga, everyone. I'm Delia, for those of you who don't know. And we're going to start on our backs today. But before I come down onto my back, I just wanted to chat with you for just a moment. We're going to be doing a yin practice today. So it's going to be pretty much no movement at all, at least once we're in the poses. So we're going to be doing less poses. It's going to be a slightly shorter practice than normal. And we're going to be moving and transitioning really mindfully between the poses. Sometimes you have a tendency to get a little bit stiff when you have been laying in one pose for a long time. Yin is great for the connective tissues of the body. It's great to stretch and apply gentle pressure. So if any position is uncomfortable for you, you really want to make use of the props that you have, blankets, pillows, bolsters, blocks, straps, so that you can come into the most comfortable version of the pose for you. So you take as much time during the transition as you need to find your comfortable version of the pose. And then you try and settle into stillness during the pose. So we're going to hold the poses for about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. It depends on the pose. We're going to do some for a little longer and some for a little shorter. And I'm not going to really speak to you much while we're in the pose. So Yin can be a very challenging practice for people who have extra busy minds or a lot of thoughts going on. So just try and focus on the breath, bringing your attention back to the breath. If you notice that your mind starts to wander in the pose, that's totally normal. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just remember that as you are noticing that your mind has wandered, that you've already come back. So just notice as many times as your mind wanders away from the breath. Notice it. Oh, okay, I've come back. And then return your mind to the breath. So if you are ever uncomfortable in any pose, you don't have to hold it stiffly in stillness. I'm not going to arrest you or punish you for moving in a pose. Definitely make sure you're comfortable. So if you need to move, please do. All right, we're going to get started on our back. We're just going to take a couple moments here once we arrive to find a little bit of movement that the body might need. So when you come down to your back, maybe taking a full body stretch, or you can take your feet as wide as your yoga mat and do some windshield wipers with the knees. Maybe rock the head very gently side to side. Maybe reaching the arms towards the ceiling, rotating the wrists. You can do the same with the feet, pointing and flexing or rotating the ankles. I always like to find movement before I come into stillness. Helps my body to feel more settled. If that doesn't feel good for you, you're absolutely welcome to just settle into stillness on your back. And then when you're ready, go ahead and find a comfortable position. Legs can be extended. You can use a bolster under the knees or blocks. You can also just take your feet as wide as your yoga mat and rest the knees together. And allow the eyes to soften or close here. And right away, begin to notice the quality of your breath. And feeling that little bit of cold air as it passes the tip of the nose. Feeling that slight bit of warming in the throat as you exhale. And beginning to deepen the breath, drawing it all the way down into the belly. Maybe even placing one or both hands on the belly about 1 inch or 2 below the belly button, feeling that rise and fall. And seeing if you can begin to soften places where you might be holding tension. Maybe places that feel a little bit stiff this morning. And seeing if you can relax your jaw, softening and smoothing out the forehead. And creating more space between the eyebrows. And feeling your shoulders and hips in contact with the mat or with your props. And give it 3 more deep, full belly breaths here. And creating this nice slow rhythm of the breath for the practice to follow today. Maybe taking a moment to set an intention or a dedication, maybe just one word that sums up how you want your day to go. And give yourself one more breath here. And then slowly go ahead and open the eyes. If your knees are not already bent, we're going to hug them into the chest. And just take a moment here. And then we're going to keep the right knee in. We're going to release the left foot to the mat. So this is your first option. Just holding this right knee. You can hold behind the knee. You can use a strap behind the knee as a little arm extender if that helps your arms relax. And you can keep this left knee bent with the foot flat on the floor, or you can go ahead and extend that left leg long. This is going to deepen your stretch with the leg extended. And you don't need to worry about flexing the left foot or the right foot. Just hugging this knee into the chest. And beginning to take some deep, full breaths here into the hip. Maybe closing the eyes if it feels good. We're going to stay here for several breaths. See if you can soften the shoulders. And if you had that left leg extended, go ahead and slowly bend it. And go ahead and release that right leg nice and slow. We want to move slowly and mindfully after we've been holding poses. If you need to take some windshield wipers, you can. Whenever you're ready, we're going to hug the left knee into the chest. We'll repeat that stretch. Again, taking plenty of time to set yourself up for each pose so that you can come into comfortable stillness. You're not trying to reach for any sensation here. You're not trying to push into a stretch. If you want, you can go ahead and extend that right leg long, or you can keep the knee bent. Using a strap if that helps you to release the shoulders more. And bringing your attention back to your breath. And if you had that right leg extended, go ahead and rebend the knee. Go ahead and release the left foot. If you need to do some windshield wipers, feel free. And then when you're ready, we're going to hug both knees into the chest. And then go ahead and open your knees as wide as is comfortable. And you can just keep the knees very bent here, whatever's comfortable for you. The feet are soft. I like to hold either the inside of my knees or the outside. So getting a nice stretch in the inner thighs and the groin area, the inner part of the hips. And maybe staying here in stillness and just breathing. Letting the hips relax a little more, letting the knees open if they want to. We're going to be a little bit more active in this pose. If you'd like, you can come into a full happy baby. So taking the soles of the feet up towards the ceiling, your shoulders. And you can flex the feet if you'd like. You can still hold on behind the knees or the thighs. You can reach for the ankles or feet, but that can kind of tense up the shoulders. So I'm going to use the option of my strap today. So I'm going to take my strap around my feet. I'm going to bring my knees nice and wide. And I'm going to press my tailbone down towards the mat. And you can even rock gently here a couple of times. So a little bit of movement in this pose is okay, but mostly we don't want it to be as active as normal. We're just going to stay here and breathe. And we're not going to hold this one for quite as long. Give it 2 more deep, full breaths wherever you are. And then if you have a strap, go ahead and release it from the feet. You can rebend the knees, set your strap aside, and then release that left foot to the mat. We're going to keep that left knee bent, and we're going to cross our right ankle over the left thigh. Right knee is coming out to the side. So this is your first option for reclined pigeon, is just to keep that right ankle on the left thigh. You do want to flex the foot here. It doesn't have to be a super flex, but you want to protect that knee. So maybe just staying here, maybe gently using your right hand to press that right thigh a little more open. You can also take a block and place it under the left foot. If you need to come up a little bit to do that, you can. That's going to give you a little bit of height without lifting into the pose fully. If you want to take some pressure off the arms, you can wind a strap behind the left knee or thigh, or you can interlace your fingers behind the left knee or thigh if you want to come into the more of a stretch here in that right hip. Remember to gently flex the right foot. Left foot can be soft. And you can even use that right elbow, if the feet are lifted, to gently press that right knee open, breathing into the right hip. If you find that you've come into a version of the pose that isn't comfortable for you, please don't hold it. Take a moment to readjust. And then come into your pose and hold it once it's feeling more comfortable. Soften the shoulders here and breathe. And give it 4 more deep breaths into that right hip. And then we're going to transition here into shoelace pose. So go ahead and release the hands. We want to keep the knees into the chest, but we want to cross that right leg more over the left knee. So now the knees are together. So my feet are lifted. If your feet are down on the ground, you can still cross that right leg over. You're still getting a different stretch into the hip, and you can just stay as you are. If you want to come into shoelace pose, you can just cross that right knee over the left, and you can hang out here with the knees crossed. You can also use a strap to help you hold on to the knees. You're kind of putting the strap, across the knees like this. And you're hugging them a little bit into the chest. So the strap can help to take some tension off of the low back. If you want to come into another version of the pose and you have the flexibility in the legs to do so without straining the arms, you can reach for the shins or for the feet. And you're trying to draw the feet away from each other and down. So this is an intense stretch into that hip. If you don't have the flexibility right now, it's morning, everything is stiff to reach the feet or the ankles or the shins, just go ahead and hold on to the knees. You're still going to get the same stretch. You do want to have a little bit of energy in the feet, protecting that knee. See if you can soften the shoulders, even though you might be using a little bit of arm strength here. Breathing into that right hip. And we're not going to hold this pose for quite as long. Go ahead and take 3 more breaths wherever you are. And then when you're ready, release the feet or the knees, set your strap aside, go ahead and uncross and release both feet to the mat. Take your feet nice and wide, and let's do those windshield wipers with the knees. Maybe even rocking the head a little gently side to side as well. And we're going to do the other side. So let's go ahead and cross that left ankle over the right thigh now, flexing the left toes, maybe staying here. You can take a block under that right foot. You can also hug the right knee in towards the chest using a strap or your hands behind that right near thigh. Softening the shoulders as much as you can. Returning to your breath. And go ahead and take 3 more breaths here. And if you'd like, you can stay with the feet lifted. You're just going to overcross now, releasing the hands and crossing that left knee over the right. You can also have the feet down on the ground, maybe just hugging the knees in towards you. And you can also use a strap, or you can reach for the ankles or the feet or any part of the leg you can reach. You're drawing the knees slightly towards your chest. You're drawing the ankles away from each other and down towards the floor. Feet are a little bit active. See if you can soften the shoulders and neck. Trying to draw the breath all the way down into that left hip, wherever you're feeling the sensation the strongest. And give it 3 more breaths here, nice and slow. And then when you're ready, take your time releasing the feet, the ankles, or the knees, whatever you were holding on to. Uncross that left knee, release the feet to the mat, and let's do some windshield wipers, feet nice and wide. And then we're going to transition mindfully up into table. So go ahead and roll to one side, whichever one is more comfortable for you. We're going to use the top arm to gently press ourselves up. And we're coming into a supported child's pose. So go ahead and grab whatever props you need. You can use a blanket under the knees if your knees are sensitive. You can use a bolster or a couple of blocks under the forehead. I'm going to use a blanket and my bolster. You can also use a stack of pillows instead of a bolster, or even on top of the bolster. So take your time. This is one where we are using a lot of props, possibly. So take your time to set up. I'm just going to take my blanket under my knees. I'm going to take my big toes to touch and my knees as wide as is comfortable for me. And then I'm going to grab my bolster and I'm going to tuck it right inside so it's touching the inside of my thighs. And then I'm just going to drape my front body over the bolster. You can even take a block on top of the bolster to get a little bit of a lift in the head if that's comfortable. Whatever feels good for you here. And again, don't feel like you have to rush into the pose. Take your time getting set up, because once we get into the pose, we want to hold it in as much stillness as possible. So if it's more comfortable for you to rest one side of your head against the bolster, please do. And I will cue you to switch to the other side. Seeing if you can soften and release into the support of your props. And if you were laying on one ear, go ahead and switch. If you were laying with the forehead down, you can stay that way, or you can transition to that now. And finding your new comfortable position and returning to the breath. And when you're ready, beginning to transition mindfully, pressing your hands into the mat to help lift your body back up. Moving any props aside, we're going to come into a seat. And if you'd like to sit up on something, I would recommend a folded blanket or a towel. The bolster is going to be a little bit too tall for our purposes. So take your time transitioning here. If your legs have started to fall asleep a little bit, that's normal. So we're going to come to a seat. Make sure that you have your block or both blocks nearby. And then let's go ahead and extend that right leg long. So it doesn't have to be the widest splits ever. We're going to tuck the left foot in towards that right thigh. So left knee is bent. And let's just take a side bend first. So we're going to send our right hand down the right leg, reach the left arm up and over. So really pressing that left hip down. Think about length from the left hip all the way to the left fingers, and then relax your head. Opening up the side body, take one more breath here. And then go ahead and look down towards your right leg. We're going to rotate our chest towards it, releasing that left hand, and then draping yourself over that leg. So if it's not comfortable to hold here, you can always take a block too and place them on top of the leg, and then release your head or your hands to the blocks. You can also take a block 1 or 2. And if it isn't comfortable to drape sideways over the leg, you can just come to the center and release the forehead this way. So whatever is comfortable for you, take a moment to transition, to try out the poses, to find what feels good. And then allow yourself to release into the pose and breathe. I'm not reaching or pulling or stretching here. I'm allowing my back to round. And breathing into the left low back. We're not going to hold this one for quite as long, so go ahead and take 3 more deep, full breaths. And then when you're ready, using your arm strength, pressing the hands against the ground, walking yourself back up. We're going to switch sides. So go ahead and open that left leg out to the side and bend the right knee. Doesn't matter if your right foot is touching the inside of your left thigh or not. And we're going to take our side bend. So sliding that left hand down the left leg, reaching the right arm up and over, keeping that right hip pressing down, release your neck. Really extending through the right fingertips. Take one more breath. And when you're ready, start to look down at your left leg, releasing that right hand, finding your fold either over the leg or you can come back to the center if that was more comfortable. Using any props to support you. And again, not reaching for sensation here, letting the background. Tucking the chin gently. And breathing into the right side of the low back. Usually one side is a little tighter than the other, so maybe this is the side you can release into a little bit fuller, or maybe it's the side that needs a little bit more support. Taking 3 more breaths wherever you are. And then once again, using your arm strength. So pressing into the floor with the hands to walk yourself back up. And we're going to open that right leg again. And this time we're going to take our straddle fold. So both legs are open. They don't have to be super wide. I'm going to use both of my blocks. You can feel free to also use a bolster in front or a couple of pillows, even a bolster with 2 blocks on top. We're going to be folding straight forward. So I like to keep a little bit of energy in my toes, and that's because I need to protect my knees. I have some arthritis in my knees. So if you have any issues in the knees, maybe keep them a little bit bent. You can even take little pillow blocks under the knees if that helps you here. Remembering you don't have to fold very far. And you can use 1 block or 2. I might actually just use 1 on its highest setting. We're going to inhale to lengthen the spine here. And on your exhale, walking yourself forward only as far as feels good to you. You can rest your forehead on a block, or you can stack your hands, your arms, and then rest your forehead on the arms. And returning to the breath, breathing into your low back here. And give it 4 more deep, full breaths. And then slowly release your hands if they were lifted. Once again, we're going to use our arm strength to walk ourselves back up. And then go ahead and bring the knees, bend them, bring the feet as wide as your yoga mat, and let's take some windshield wipers. So getting a little bit of movement here. And we're going to make our way down onto our back again. So go ahead and keep any props that you think you might need for your Shavasana nearby. Definitely, you're going to want one block. We're going to be heading into supported bridge. So I'm going to move my blanket aside now because I'm done with it. And take your time coming down. So coming down onto your back. And then when you're ready, drawing the feet back, they're about hip distance apart, pressing into the feet and lifting just enough to slide the block or a pillow under the sacrum. So the sacrum is the flat area between your tailbone and your waist. You may have to adjust the block a few times. Please feel free to do that. You want your block on its lowest setting. And then when you have your block or your pillow in a comfortable position, if it feels good for you, go ahead and open the palms up towards the ceiling, getting the full opening in the chest and shoulders, and find a little tiny, tiny lift of your chin up towards the ceiling as well. So the tendency here is to flatten out the back of the neck, and you really want to keep that nice natural curve. And then take some deep, full belly breaths here. And sometimes we transition here into other spaces, other movements, other shapes, but we're just going to stay here if it's comfortable for you with the knees bent. If you would like to have a slightly deeper back bend, you can always extend the legs out long on your mat. Deep, full belly breaths. And give it 3 more breaths wherever you are. And then when you're ready, pressing into the feet, rebending the knees if they were extended first, and then pressing into the feet just enough to lift the hips and slide the block or the pillow out and rolling down nice and slow through the spine. And when your hips touch, you can go ahead and draw both knees into the chest, maybe rock gently side to side, or drawing a tiny circle with the knees, first one way and then the other. And then we're going to come into our reclined cobbler's pose or butterfly. So releasing the soles of the feet to the mat, we're going to open the knees wide. And a more supported version of this pose might be to take your blocks and place them under the knees or thighs for some support here so you don't have to hold the knees up. And if you are like me and forgot and only grabbed one block, take your time to grab the other, coming up mindfully if you need to, and then returning back to your back. So the bottoms of the feet are together, the knees are wide. And if it's comfortable for you, taking blocks underneath the knees or thighs. Blocks can be on any height under the legs. It's just for some support here. And hands can come to the belly, or the arms can go up and overhead with the elbows bent. Whatever feels comfortable for you today. Taking some deep, deep, full belly breaths here. And give it 3 more breaths wherever you are. And if your arms are lifted, go ahead and slowly release them down. And gently take your hands to the outsides of the thighs to help close your knees together. Go ahead and remove the blocks, and you can set them aside. And we're going to come up just for a moment so we can come back into fish. So roll to one side and prop yourself up. And I'm going to do fish today with my blocks, supported fish. You're welcome to use a bolster. We've done that a couple of times. If you would rather use a bolster, I'll show you how that looks after I show you with the blocks. So for fish, the blocks are going to be on top of each other, kind of like a letter T. So the top one is, they're not going to be touching. This one's for your head, and it's going horizontally, so perpendicular to your mat. The one that's going between your shoulder blades is going to be vertically. So you want the block between your shoulder blades to hit you right at about the center of the shoulder blades. And then the block that goes under your head can either be on its flattest setting or it can be up one as well, if that's more comfortable for you. So you can also use a bolster, and you're going to tuck the bolster right up against the low back and then drape the back over it. So I'm going to use my blocks today. So feel free to try out either version of the pose or both and find the comfortable position for you. Oops, I'm not quite aligned. This is why we take lots of time setting up in yin poses so that when we do come into our stillness, we will be very comfortable and can just hold that pose. So take your time finding any version of fish that's comfortable for you, and the knees can stay bent here, or you can extend the legs long. Arms are going to come out to the sides, palms face up like we were in our supported bridge. Gentle heart opener. If you decide that the blocks are uncomfortable for you here, you can always use a pillow between the shoulder blades and a block behind the head. So really finding the best version of the pose for you, and then returning to your breath. And give yourself 4 more breaths wherever you are. And we're going to be heading into Shavasana. So if you're feeling comfortable in fish pose, you're totally welcome to stay here for your Shavasana. If you'd like to begin to transition to any other comfortable pose, any other pose we did today, cobbler's pose with the blocks under the knees would be a good one, or even just taking your bolster under your knees. To get off your blocks, go ahead and bend the knees and roll to one side first. And then press up and remove the blocks if you're coming out of fish pose and into a different pose for Shavasana. A bolster or a pillow under the knees can be really supportive, especially if you're feeling any pain or pinching in the low back or just any stiffness today. So taking your time, setting up for your final resting pose. And before we head too far into it, I'm going to give you the option, if you're feeling comfortable in Shavasana, to take a longer Shavasana for yourself today. So when I start to bring you out, if you are not ready and would like to stay in Shavasana, please do. Finding your final resting pose. Allowing the shoulders to slide down the back. Palms can be open towards the ceiling or they can be on the belly. And let's all take a deep, deep, full breath in through the nose. Open the mouth, sigh it out. 2 more times. Deep, deep, full breath in. Long letting go, sigh out. And last time, deep, full breath in. And let everything go. Allow the eyes to soften or close if they aren't already. Allow all points of contact with the mat to become softer and heavier. Softening across the forehead. Releasing the jaw. Softening the neck, the shoulders. Chest and belly are open. Softening the arms, the back. Hips are heavy and pelvis is relaxed. Scanning down the legs and releasing any last bits of tension that are lingering there. Softening the ankles, the feet, the toes. And just giving yourself these moments to absorb your practice and releasing anything that's no longer serving you. Slowly beginning to bring your attention back to your breath. Slowly beginning to deepen it. Finding any movement that feels good in the fingers and toes. Maybe gently rocking the head from side to side. If you want to stay in Shavasana for longer, please feel free. If you're ready to come out, taking your time, being mindful of your props, rolling onto one side off of any props first, and then using your top arm to gently press yourself up. If you need to open the eyes, go ahead. Finding your comfortable seat, and then allowing the eyes to soften or close once more when you arrive. Sitting up nice and tall. Just noticing how you're feeling at the end of your practice, noticing if anything has shifted for you energetically, emotionally, mentally, physically. And if not, recognizing that coming to our mat is always different and unique every day. Drawing the hands together at the heart if it's comfortable, sealing in your practice today. Taking a moment of gratitude to yourself for making this time and space to be with your breath. And thank you so much for joining me. Have a lovely rest of your day. Namaste.